My glands were swollen in my throat, and I just would have this reoccurring pain. Clearly, I was not speaking my truth. The experience of actually feeling the energy was mind-blowing to me. The Qigong really did that.
So many people are looking for the sacred, but not really having a system to relate to it.
You just described perfectly how and why I knew that the world was ready for this 13 Sacred Nights practice. We will not be still. We will not quiet down. We will not dive into the darkness, right? And so this practice is asking us to embrace the darkness.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Enheartened. Today I am with Lara J. And, you know, there are these people that you get in touch with and you're like, I just want to invite more of that energy. I just want to welcome more of that energy. I want to make more room for it. I want to interact with it. I want to connect with it. And that's what I felt when I got into Lara's world for the very first time. The way my perception after diving into Lara's universe is she is a master of energy. You know, however you understand energy. And I have a feeling that the more you are in right relationship with energy, within and without you, and with consciousness at large, you know, within and without, you know, around you, the more you live a vibrant life. And that's really what I hope to bring forth more of in this conversation with Lara. Lara is the creator of I hope I don't mess this up, the 13 Oracle deck. Did I say it wrong? Did I forget a word there?
The 13 Sacred Nights
The 18
Oracle.
Sacred Nights. I knew I was forgetting something. I was like, the 13 Sacred Nights Oracle deck, you know. And we're gonna get into that some more because I don't wanna kind of put into that my own bias. I feel like coming from the creator, it would be great to hear it from you. So yeah, I just want to dive into this conversation and really suck the juice of what you have to offer to people tuning in right now. Miss Lara, welcome to Enheartened. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing wonderful. Very happy to be here. So glad that this connection is happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
And there's a lot of juiciness. The juice is it's all here.
I love it. I love it. That's great. If somebody just entered your universe right now, what is the first thing they would need to know to have a sense of who you are?
Of who I am. I think the first thing that just popped into my mind, I'll go with that, is that for me, this whole exploration, the seeking, the practicing, the Qigong that I do, even the Oracle deck, it all for me is rooted in a playfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I step into my practice, whether it's the Sacred Nights or my Qigong practice, my daily Qigong practice, I approach it as if I like to say it's like a hot date with the divine.
Yes.
And so for me,
What do you mean by a hot date?
Yeah, hot date with the divine. So for me, when I am practicing Qigong, which is meditative movement, Chinese energy practice, right? I feel like it's like a combination between dancing with, massaging myself with and in, bathing in this suddenly tangible energy that is all around me and within me. So I do my best to always approach my practice with this feeling of I'm going on a hot date, and it can feel good and it can be playful, and it's not this hard disciplined thing that I do because I have to.
Yeah, I love that. I'm taking a few themes here. One is, discipline and your view of that I want to get into at some point. And I love something about discipline and the root of it, which is working with the disciple archetype. And, I want to get in that. I want to hold that thought there. And the other thing is like really the hot date with the divine. That really speaks to me, to a certain degree, it speaks to me. I'm like, a hot date with God. What is that about? For me, what does that look like? But before we get in there, I want to go to what is your origin story and how did you get to Qigong? If we go, let's say, in your first, like, if we look back at your first 10 years on Earth, would you say that there is something going on there, looking back, that was predisposing you to be attracted to things like Qigong?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, well, I'll say this movement has always been a part of my story. I started dancing when I was a toddler, in
Mm,
little dance classes and ballet and tap and whatnot. Started teaching dance when I was 15 years old. So I have been guiding bodies through space for a very long time.
yeah.
And and then aside from the movement piece, which ties into my constitutional element in the medical qigong system, which is wood, which is our movement.
Right.
But anyhow, so you can look back in retrospect and go, oh yes, it all makes sense, but also I did have some very early experiences, spontaneous out of body experiences, and
Mm,
um, things that at the time frightened me
mhm,
because I didn't have anyone to talk to or anyone in my life who was spiritually leaning or religiously leaning at all. I was raised
yeah.
in a very secular middle class family, and so yeah, I think the curiosity and the the seeking and the desire to know what that was all about was there from a very young age.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. You mentioned something about the qigong and the by the way, I am a complete noob when it comes to qigong. You know, I am far from being an amateur. That's how noob to qigong I am. I know I have many friends that are deep into it, you know, and I just want to say that. So
Yeah,
let's say there's a complete, you know, dummy that approaches qigong like me for the first time. It's like, okay, what is the first thing I would need to know about qigong? And you also mentioned the kind of like elements in there, the constitution that you
yeah.
mentioned, and that yours is wood. I just want to absorb a little bit of that.
Yeah, so it's a very rich system, but let me back up a little bit and
Mhm.
define for those listening who also are, unaware of qigong maybe or just hearing about it. So the word itself means the good work or practice of cultivating life force energy. So
Yes.
qi meaning life force energy, and gong meaning a good work or practice.
Hmm.
So when I bring up Qigong in conversation and people look at me blankly and say, "What's that?" I'll often say, "Have you ever heard of Tai Chi? Or do you know what Tai Chi is?" And very often people have an experience of that. And oh, yes, that's that martial art where people are moving really gently and slowly through space. Well, Tai Chi is a form of Qigong. So Qigong is the greater umbrella.
Hmm.
Again, the cultivation of this universal life force energy, and Tai Chi is a form of Qigong that is a martial art in nature. In China, something like calligraphy could even be a form of Qigong if it's
Hmm.
approached with the intention of, spiritual development and again, cultivating energy.
Yes.
So, so the qigong that I practice is not a martial art. It's for the benefit of physical vitality and health, emotional harmony and well being, and then spiritual growth. And so I do the physical movement practices. There are also internal practices where you're seated. You're not
Hmm.
moving your body physically through space, but you are moving energy internally. And then there's also um, the clinical application where you have a practitioner, a qigong practitioner, and a client on a massage table typically,
Yeah.
and you are working with the meridians and the organ systems and the wood, fire, earth, metal, water, five element system of Chinese medicine.
Hmm.
And sort of a simplified, oversimplified way of saying it might be that it's sort of like an acupuncture session without the needles.
I love
So,
that.
yeah. So that's sort of a general explanation of what qigong is.
And you've mentioned something about first. I want to say thank you for clarifying that for everybody who like me has heard of qigong, has like seen qigong exercises on the internet that you've even adopted yourself. Because I have a few qigong exercises that I have friends that are facilitators who have suggested exercises. I'm just like, yeah, that looks good. I'm going to put it into my movement practice. But really sitting with the core of what qigong is, I haven't really allowed myself to explore that on a deeper level. So thank you for saying that. You mentioned the constitution, the individual constitution of you mentioned you said yours is wood.
Yeah.
um so what does that look like for somebody to find out
Yeah.
the constitution there?
That can be can be an exploration that can
Yeah.
take a while. It might
Mhm.
not, somebody might not be able to immediately identify what their constitutional element is. Um, um, and I want to throw out the disclaimer here that although I already put myself in a box saying that I'm a wood person,
Yeah.
I feel like there are so many systems out there that that do just that, put you in a box. You know, you're a Virgo, you're a wood person, you're a,
Yeah.
you know, there's a million systems, right? You're
Yes.
a manifesting, whatever. So
Generator.
generator. There you go. Yeah. And on the one hand, I think we can gain a lot of insight from exploring different systems and ways of looking at this experience and our character and who we are. And I think also we have to be careful
Yes.
because we go through seasons in our life, and
Yeah.
although maybe in the background wood has often been a theme that seems to be present for me, you know, I've gone through other seasons in my life where suddenly I realized, oh no, I'm actually right now in a season of metal, you know, or in a season of water, whatever it is. And we're not just one thing. We're
Yes.
also complex and individual and unique. And so on the one hand, it's fun to explore and it can absolutely be helpful. And on the other hand, I like to let it all go and just
Yeah.
be an individual.
One
That's
thing
a mystery.
I
Yeah.
want to name here. It's like how you qigong your way around this question, because I was coming up with the question about, okay, what is the appropriate relationship that we get to have with all these like classifications and all of that, because so many people are looking for their identity through systems, like you
Right.
mentioned, you know, and we're like, okay, we're just looking for the thing that can represent us fully. It's like, just tell me what my gene keys are, what my
Tell me
human
who I
design
am.
is. Just tell me who I am. And
Yeah.
I don't want to do the work of like going through the inner exploration. I just want to know, how am I supposed to make choices? What am I supposed to like? What am I supposed not to like?
Please
Anyways, I
make
just
this easier. Yeah, and
yeah,
less messy, right? And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just messy. It just is.
I love that. You know,
Being human is messy. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was great to just bring that disclaimer. Um, and I would love to say, if somebody is just getting their feet wet
Yeah.
in Qigong and wants to learn how to begin to interact with it, to interact with all these different classifications and elements, how can they go about it?
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, to do the Qigong practice forms, you don't need to know what your constitutional element is or any of that. That's more of the philosophy side of things. And for me, it's one of the things that I fell in love with about Qigong because there was so much juiciness that's a part of it, and so much to dive into. But you certainly can do the practice and not know anything about the philosophy, that the physical practices, and still reap all the benefits. That said, if you're curious about the five element system, oh gosh, there's a book that gives a great summary. I might have to think of it later, and you can put it in the show notes, perhaps. But that's a fun place to start. That just gives a little summary of each of the five elements and how they manifest, because with the five elements, there's just an endless list of correlations that go along with each element. So you have the correlations in your physical body, in your organs. There's an orifice that corresponds. There's a tissue. There's there's just all these different categories of correspondences with each of the elements. There's emotional tendencies, there are thought patterns, there are even, events that might play out in your life that are, say, metal events or water events, So it's as if we have these 5 flavors that consciousness itself is able to express through.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything that we experience in this human experience is that same, source energy kind
Mm-hmm.
of moving through one of those lenses, so to
Yeah.
speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So whether it's the density, that same energy is expressing, if let's just talk about wood, right? So in nature, that's everything growing. It's trees and grasses and roots and mushrooms and all the things in nature that grow. The season is the season of spring. The color is green. It's a moist, warm energy. It's in the body. It's held in your liver and gallbladder. It's your eyes. It's your tendons and your connective tissues. It's expresses as our ability to make choices and move ourselves down our life path, to choose to go around, under, or through any or all obstacles. When our movement is blocked, we
Mm-hmm.
experience frustration, anger, resentment. Those are some of the more challenging sides of the wood element. And then, again, in the level of mind, it's this ability to think clearly, to plan, to make choices in your life like that. So you can see how it's one flavor, but
Mm-hmm.
then it's manifesting, from dense to less dense in all these different ways.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So what
Yeah.
I'm hearing as you're saying this, it's almost like a system to relate to consciousness, a system to relate to energy, and to also relate to our bodies and what our bodies are expressing. And what I'm hearing is it's a way to maybe understand the highest invitation of each moment that we're navigating, or maybe the highest invitation within each ailment, like the highest invitation in some of the emotions that we are expressing or not expressing, and
Yeah.
what is needed there. Is there something that I'm missing?
No, I think that's a nice way of saying it. And also, that these 5 elements, wood, fire, earth, metal, water,
Yeah.
they all influence each other, interact with each other, and support each other, nourish each other. And so there's this blending of the 5 elements happening in
Hmm.
life. And when you really begin to get to know each element, things kind of start to make sense a little bit more. And it's you can see in yourself, oh, that's my tendency towards wood that is feeling, frustrated right now. And if
Yes.
you know, like, the positive expression, and then the more, I don't want to use the word negative, but imbalanced, or, expression, um, then you can become a little bit more aware of these patterns that are part of this experience. Um, yeah. Yeah, and then, of
But
course, we all have all the 5 elements within us, right?
yes.
We're not just one of them, but we might have one that I like to say, like, for me, I already outed myself as a wood person, that um that I that's like my special friend, that
Yeah.
I came in this life to get to know and to cozy up to and to really explore. And you could have 5 children in the same family, right?
Yeah.
Experiencing all the same events and parents, and they're each gonna respond to those events in a different way that stimulates their constitutional element and or special friend or theme that they came to explore in this life.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. You know, um, a place where I would love to go. It's like I was reading. I was a little of a stalker before our, our conversation today, and I read a bit about your birthing story. You're giving birth to your daughter, and how it turned into a battle with chronic illness, and how you felt blindsided by your body to a great extent. Was that a determining factor that brought you? First, I would love to have your impression, without pushing on something that is too painful. Um, I would love to have your impression of what was going on in your life there, and maybe the potential imbalances that like from where you stand here, you can identify, and how, first, without assuming, was that a marking event that brought you closer to Qigong?
Oh,
And has,
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
is the event.
okay.
And it wasn't not so much the birthing story, but three as far as the actual because the birth of my daughter was wonderful. It was a home birth and it all went really well. But 3 months after she was born, I tripped into chronic illness, and
Hmm.
I was living in Boulder, Colorado at the time, the epicenter of, like, all things alternative and all the
Yeah,
gurus there.
yeah.
you
All
know,
the woo woo.
so yes, all the woo. I had so many options to explore, and I was exploring many of them, and still not able to pull myself out of feeling unwell and chronically ill. And so a good friend of mine, came to me one day and recommended. She said, "I went to go see this woman, and she told me that I have foreign energy." And I went to go see her, and she cleared me, and and I feel better. And I thought, oh, I must have that.
Mm,
Because I had no idea what that meant or
yeah.
anything, but I just thought, oh, I've definitely got that because I don't feel good. And so I went to go see this woman as a client, and she didn't even touch me. Right, it was
Hmm.
an energy session, and I walked out of there that day feeling like I had been breathing underwater, and I didn't know it. And suddenly, it was like my head was above water, and my lungs felt more expansive. Like, it was so clear. This was not a subtle, oh, maybe it helped, maybe it didn't experience. It was like,
Yeah,
holy smokes, I can breathe again.
yeah.
And then I went to the grocery store that I always went to, and I literally felt like I had a different bird's eye view of the cash register. Like, I was physically taller, and it
Mm,
it was bizarre. I mean, it was so concrete that it was like, what the heck did she do?
yeah.
And bless her, I am so grateful to have her in my life as a teacher and a friend and a mentor all these years. I can't imagine moving through this life without the tools that she's given me and the support. But she's not the best at bridging the gap between, like, where she's at and
Hmm.
a complete beginner.
Yeah,
And so she had just thrown all this language at me, like, oh, your Jing and your Qi and your Shen and your group fields and your this and your that and the foreign energy and the lower and the aggressive and just all this. And I just was sitting there trying to take it all in. I had no idea. I still didn't even know what Qigong was.
yeah.
I went to go see a Qigong practitioner, but I didn't know what Qigong was. But I walked out of there so just transformed
Yeah.
physically that I immediately signed up for her 4-year medical Qigong program.
Hmm.
So yes, that this the illness, the unwellness, the chronic whatever that was. That's a
Yeah,
whole nother podcast.
yeah. I wa- I kind of want to have the show notes of that podcast though.
Okay.
It's like, if you were to take a before and after picture of, like, who you are entering into that session, like a snapshot of your perspective of the imbalances that are there, and then who you turning into. And I assume it was a process. I think,
Oh, of
I
course.
assume it wasn't. I mean, I suppose you'll let me know what really happened. I suppose it wasn't a one time fix all session, and that many things had to shift and adjust and change after that. But I want to have a little bit of a before and after picture. It's like, how did that shift your relationship with your own energetic system?
Um, well, just that one session or the ongoing
No,
exploration.
I mean, the ongoing exploration, like how your relationship with Qigong in general shifted
Yeah.
you from the Lara who is entering, dealing with all these chronic issues. And also, I love the symbolism in the chronic issues that we are experiencing.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that is curious and saying, okay, what was that for you? What were the
Yeah.
symptoms you were dealing with?
Yeah.
Energetically, what was your body attempting to say?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, okay, what really shifted?
Yeah. Well, okay. Which one do I address? Well, let me go back to Qigong first, and then we'll talk
Yes.
about the symptoms.
Yes.
Here, I'll write that here so I don't forget. Um, but the Qigong for me, so I had already like I mentioned, I started teaching dance when I was 15 years old, and then I discovered yoga at, I don't remember, age 19 or something, and started teaching yoga at age 23. So I had already been teaching yoga for 6 or 7 years by
Mm-hmm.
the time that I discovered Qigong. And
Mm-hmm.
I immediately like traded sides.
Mm.
Just, my hamstrings are a little worse off for it now, but from that day forward, it was Qigong. And that was all that I wanted to explore and do.
Yeah.
And for me, the experience of tangibly feeling energy, just the
Mm-hmm.
very first Qigong practice I did, where we were doing a little bit of La Qi, expanding and contracting the hands
Mm-hmm.
in front of you. So you're like massaging this invisible ball of energy, right? And the experience of actually feeling the energy
Yeah.
was mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
And so as I continued to dive further into the 4-year program and studying energy, it was just a complete um, awakening. I mean, I was just oblivious previous to that, even, in the yoga world. And I somehow, yoga is a beautiful practice as well. It's not to slam it. It's just that for me, it didn't, it didn't make the experience of the underlying energy
Mm-hmm.
available.
Mm-hmm.
And the Qigong really did that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And partially again, I can give thanks to my teacher, because she was so beautiful in the way that she really went deep with the philosophy. And when you're working with this particular movement, this is why, and here's what it symbolizes, and here's what you're actually moving in your energy body when your hands go like this and like that, and here's the emotional metaphor, and so it just really helped me bring in, one, so much information and understanding, but then two, the actual tangible experience of feeling the energy in a way that brought me just a million times greater awareness
Yeah.
of how I'm being me, how I'm moving through life, how it's all connected, how who I'm being in here is reflected back to me out there. It just was much more complete for me. And so yeah,
I
yeah,
love that. I love
yeah.
that. And I'm curious about now this. Now, before we even go there, I'm would you say that through Qigong you found an outlet to relate to God?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Mm.
I think that was, part of why I was in the yoga as well. And I'll be honest, like I came into yoga initially as a 19-year-old simply because it was a fantastic physical practice.
Yeah.
And I was very athletic, and it was a, cutthroat. I started with power yoga and then eventually
Mm.
made my way over the years to Ashtanga and then Iyengar. And, so it was a morphing journey as well. And probably prepared me to a large degree for the Qigong. Um, but yes, absolutely. It was is all an exercise in getting cozying up to God. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel would you say it's your experience? I feel like many people look for a relationship to the sacred. They are looking for what is sacred. And for the most part, we've lost trust in the institutions out there that claim that, okay, this is where you come to find God.
Yeah.
Many people have lost trust in um, m- most big religious institution. And I feel like so many people are looking for the sacred, but not really having a system to relate to it.
So I'm going to just take that as a segue, because you just described perfectly
Mhm.
how and why I knew that the world was ready for this 13 Sacred Nights practice.
Yeah.
Because, I think, so the 13 Sacred Nights practice is a winter solstice practice.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can do to honor that time and to anchor into something deeper and more meaningful than the consumerism, the shopping, the sugar, and the alcohol that our winter holidays have become,
Yeah.
right? And and I think that so many people are over the commercialism. They're sick of that. They know that's not the answer and is
Mhm.
certainly not sacred. And yet at the same time, they perhaps were, traumatized by religion in their youth or their upbringing, and like you mentioned, are no longer trusting that. So they're left, wanting, understanding, intuitively, there's something about this time that's special. They want to engage in some kind of meaningful relationship with the sacred, with God, with spirit, source, the quantum, whatever, however you name that, something
Yeah.
greater, right?
Yeah.
But they don't quite know how.
Yeah.
And that's what this practice does so beautifully, is it gives us a very simple and modern, accessible container that yet is just brilliant at just plunging us right into that relationship with the sacred and the divine.
I love that. I love that so much. I want to
Yeah.
explore that some more. I want to explore that some more. And I also want to explore why specifically winter, because when I was reading about the 13 Sacred Knights Oracle deck, um, I was like, okay, there is, and I'm not sure if the collective energies informed the fact that you work specifically with winter, at the very least, the way I'm understanding it. But yeah, there was this question that I want to go back to, like the snapshot. It's like Lara dealing with chronic illness, and like a snapshot of what
Right.
your
The
energetic
symptoms.
system was attempting to say to you, but that you couldn't hear, you couldn't understand.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit revealing, but essentially, my illness started with a strep throat uh,
Hmm.
that I couldn't get rid of.
Mhm.
And then that sort of shifted into, overall unwellness and feeling fluish off and on. But it was really centered. My glands were swollen in my throat, and I just would have this reoccurring pain and
Mhm.
soreness in my throat. So, clearly, I was not speaking my truth or
Mhm.
voicing my truth at that time. And the revealing bit is that I think it had to do with my relationship and my marriage.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah. So
And how did that evolve if it's not too personal?
how did that evolve? I mean, I think honestly,
That relationship, your relationship
yeah,
with your truth, and that relationship as a consequence.
yeah. I explored so many modalities over the 15 or 16-year period of my marriage.
Yeah.
And the illness was moving all around and morphing and shifting, and never really, there were things that helped, absolutely. And so, you always see the gems in the journey after the fact,
Yeah.
right? And I wouldn't be who I am today were it not for all of that. And yet, things didn't really truly lift and transform until that relationship ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is your life now reflecting more or less? I mean, first, would you say your relationship with your energy is more congruent than it was before, especially during that time?
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as we went there with
Yeah.
the relationship stuff, I would love to tell a story that is
Please.
that is absolutely perhaps the most profound moment of my life to date.
Hmm.
And and so and it's the story of how the ending of that relationship came about. But essentially, I had a best friend who who tripped into schizophrenia in his early 20s, and
Mm.
our parents were best friends. Our moms were best friends, and so we grew up like siblings together. And he died in January of 2022, and the morning after he died, I went for a sunrise walk, which was a ritual of mine at the time. And now I do sunrise sits. I've gotten a little lazy, but I used to go hike to the top of a hill and do a sunrise hike every morning.
Yeah.
So I was on my sunrise walk the morning after he died, and I could feel him. It
Hmm.
was absolutely Josh. I could feel him hovering over my right shoulder. And what's interesting about that is that one of my one of my addictions or guilty pleasures is near-death experiences, the books
Mm.
and podcasts and all the things, right? I just love it. I don't know why everybody else isn't as curious as I am. Like, here are people who've actually died and
Yeah,
been
and
on
they
the
came
other
back.
side of the veil, and you're not curious what they have to say. Like, I love it. But anyway, I later, after this experience with Josh, read in one of my near-death experience books that's typically when people experience a loved one that's passed on, it's very often over up high over the right shoulder, which is exactly where I felt him. So
Mm.
that was a confirmation,
Sure.
I think I read that like a year later or something. But I was walking with him that morning and I had this knee-jerk moment where I just thought, God, how could I have helped more? Because his life was intense. It was this roller coaster of, in and out of jail and in and out of facilities and often on the streets and often on street drugs and often on, these antipsychotic drugs that would just zombie him out, and really intense, wild ride of a life. And so I had this moment where I just said to Josh, like, how could I have helped you more? How could I have been a better friend? And ultimately, the question that landed with me was, how could I have loved you better, Josh?
Mhm.
And his immediate reflection back to me was, you've loved me perfectly, but apply that question to your life right now.
Mhm.
And that was so simple and so beautiful all at the same time. And I thought, oh, wow. Okay, well, how can I love my mom better? And I thought, well, she drives me crazy, but once a week I can say, yes, mom. Yes, we can go out to breakfast today, And
Yeah.
she was doing a little better at the time. Now she's very deep in dementia and I take care of her. And ironically, she no longer drives me crazy, even though she's requires a lot of patience.
Yes.
But so at the time it was like, well, that would be loving my mom better, to agree to
Yeah.
go out to breakfast once a week. And then the next person on the list was my brother, and how can I love my brother better? And it was like, well, I swear we come from different planets or different universes or galaxies, but once a day I can give him 5 minutes of my undivided attention. Like, just really
Mhm.
be present with him, whatever he wants to talk about, even though it's perhaps things that I'm not interested in, or, whatever, just be present with him 5 minutes a day. My brother's disabled. I also live with him. So, that would be loving my brother better.
Yeah.
And the next person on the list was my husband at the time. And it was, how can you love your husband better? And the question that um, flooded to the surface immediately was so clear, or the answer rather to that question, so clear and so obviously truly rooted in a place of love. Like, this would be the most loving thing to do for him. And it was to dissolve the marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that I know that was Josh's parting gift to me. And it's what gave me the courage to end the marriage for both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, I had been circling around and around for years.
Yeah. You know what
Yeah,
I love to in that moment is it's a moment where you basically said, I'm available for truth.
yeah, yeah,
And one thing that I like about truth and that I also hate about truth, it demands immediate change.
yeah,
And I often say people, well, if you just make yourself available to hearing truth, it will demand action of some kind.
yeah,
And yeah, I just love what you're reflecting. And the place where I would love to go right now is to bring this question forth. First, I'm just hearing your journey. I'm like, you are kind of caring a lot at the moment, like caring in terms of like CARE, to care. Like, you're
mm,
taking care of your mom, you're taking care of your brother. How is Qigong supporting you with the capacity to be there with it all?
no,
Not
it's just
necessarily hold it all, but just like be there with it all.
yeah, it's a relationship with God, right? That gets
Hmm.
deeper and wider. And I have had some really intense stuff happening just at home in the last month. And I was able to access a place of complete surrender that
Hmm.
without my own history and without, these practices, I'm sure I would never have even known existed,
Yeah.
and the teachers that I've learned from, whether they're my flesh and blood teachers, Damaris and Robert, or the many books that I've, learned from. But, this understanding that, that at some point, we have to stop attempting to wrangle life.
What do you mean by that?
It's like we're constantly arguing with life, right?
Yes.
Like, I want it to be this way, or wouldn't that be a little bit nicer? Or, oh, if my body were this way, or my house were that way, or this relationship were that way, or this person were different, or the town that I lived in, whatever it is, it's like we're kind of constantly just arguing with life and trying to perfect or curate this experience of ours the way that our ego mind or our personal mind wants it to be.
Yeah.
Right. And when you come up against some life situation where you clearly have no control,
Yeah.
right, you are just not in the driver's seat, and there's no changing that.
Yeah.
In a way, if you're able to fully surrender, it's really a discovery of a different level of peace and faith that this is out of my hands. Clearly, there's nothing I can do about it, and the only choice here is to hand it over and surrender.
Yeah.
So this is in your hands, God.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's yeah.
And how are you being stretched in more surrender at the moment? I'm thinking about you being the spokesperson for the 13 Sacred Nights Oracle.
Yes.
You being the spokesperson of your own Qigong practice, and you being like, there are so many hacks that you juggle.
Yeah.
It's like, how has your relationship to surrender evolved over the years? But also from the perspective of somebody whose light is, I feel like your light is directing you. Of course,
Yeah.
you're directing yourself, but there's a journey of like surrendering to it as well. So how do you finance spiritually your mission in the midst of everything that you're also
Yeah.
holding?
That's the dance, right? It's just the dance is surrendering to what is and allowing yourself to simultaneously be led and also initiate action. It's that funny place that I don't even know how to explain it. It's it's like this, often when I'm leading meditation, and we drop in initially, and we're, expanding our sensing and listening out wider and wider. I'll talk about how it's, you reach this place that's almost like a cross between listening and feeling, right? It's like something
Yes.
in between or both at the same time. And I think that's just the way that I try to walk through my life, is with this, in this place of listening and feeling, allowing my heart to lead me in conversation with God, constantly trying to be more and more aware of the conversation that I'm always in with God, whether I'm awake to it or not, because that's what it is, right? This experience of being human is co-creation, and we are in conversation with Source or God all the time, with our thoughts and our emotions and the energy that we're, again, whether we're aware of it or not. So, and I don't know how I do it. I homeschool my daughter. I all these. I don't know. I'm just doing it, Xavier.
So you just like you just said yes to life.
Yes, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
rich and it's full and it's wonderful, and here we
Yeah.
are.
I love it. I love it. You know, going back to the 13 Sacred Nights Oracle deck, why 13 Sacred Nights?
Yeah,
Where's
yes,
the name coming from?
yeah. Well, so I actually learned this practice from my Qigong teacher. It's not a Qigong practice. She is wonderfully eclectic and divinely feminine in the way that she teaches. She brings in her main lineage is Qigong, but she also would bring into our training, African shamanism and or Native American healing, teachings, and then a lot from the anthroposophic Rudolf Steiner community, which is where she learned this practice. And then she took it and made it her own. And then I took what she gave me and made it my own. And then here we are with this, oracle that I'm presenting to the world. But specifically the number 13, because the number 13 was originally a representation of the divine feminine. So we have 13 moon cycles in the year, and therefore 13 female fertility cycles. And so a practice like this, and this will make more sense when I get into explaining the nuts and bolts of the structure of the practice, but would have perhaps originally been done with the 13 moon cycles of the year. Now, this is a practice that is inspired by ancient wisdom, cultures that lived with and much more closely in tune to nature, her rhythms, her patterns, the seasons, the position of the stars, the sun, the movement of the sun and the moon. So inspired by all of that, and yet in a modern presentation that makes it accessible for those of us living, in the 12 calendar month and year. And but the 13 is from that imprint, right?
Yeah.
So that when the Roman Catholic Church came in and attempted to erase and destroy all things goddess, right? The number 13 suddenly turned dark and superstitious and was associated with bad luck and all of these things. Hence, we have cruise ships with no 13th room, and the Empire State Building with no 13th floor, and cities with no 13th Avenue, and Friday the 13th, which I lived in Chile for a year, and down there it's Tuesday the 13th, which is bizarre and random. But so the number 13 is the association with the goddess and all things cyclical and more nature-based, earth-based traditions.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And the application of how first I was thinking about why 13 nights? Especially the night. What about the night makes it relevant to the use of this practice? Or is it just in the name? Or is it also in the practice? I'm wondering.
Yeah. Well, so the way that maybe I should just dive into the structure of the practice.
Yeah,
and then
if that resonates with you.
Yeah, and then all of that may make more sense, and then it will also
Absolutely.
So the practice begins on the winter solstice, the longest, darkest night of the year, right? And this is a practice that asks us to tune into nature and the seasons, and specifically the winter solstice season, the peak of winter, the peak of darkness, right? So in the Qigong system, that would be the peak of yin. If you think of the yin yang, right? It's the place where the black is bulging. It's the most black that we're ever going to get. So what's nature doing at that time? The trees have dropped their leaves. Animals are hibernating or slowing down. Plants and grasses have receded back into the earth. The seeds have descended deep into the soil. And everything is conserving energy. There's this feeling of drawing energy inward. And yet here we are in the Northern Hemisphere, for the most part, shopping compulsively, overindulging in sugar and alcohol, which is taxing the body as opposed to conserving energy. It is the most busy time of year for most folks. Our December calendars are jam-packed. We are flooding our lawns with LED lights, which is just like a slap in the face to the darkness. Like, no, we will not be still. We will not quiet down. We will not, dive into the darkness, right?
Yeah.
And so this practice is asking us to embrace the darkness, to dive into the stillness, and to really align with the true gifts and the true energy of the season. Now, it has this really delightful 13-day structure where each of the 13 days and nights corresponds to a month in the coming year, with the exception of the first night, which is like a foreshadowing for the entire cycle of seasons to come: winter, spring, summer, fall. So I say that we are planting our dream seeds in the fertile soil of the darkness, the womb of winter. This is the first part of the cycle, right? This This is the womb where the inspiration for the coming cycle will be born. The inspiration is sprouting in the spring. It's blooming into its full expansion in the summertime. We are living the dreams that we planted in the darkness.
Yeah.
And then in the fall, there's this richness. We're harvesting the fruits of our labor of the year gone by. We're perhaps reflecting on the cycle gone by, thinking about what we want to keep for the coming cycle, what we want to throw on the compost pile before diving back in for another cycle of seasons. So this practice is a way of amplifying the co-creative process by aligning with this rhythm of the seasons. And I can get into a little bit more detail about how we do that, but I'm going to pause and let you respond.
I mean, I'm just like, I was hanging there. I was just like, okay, let's dive into more. But what I'm hearing at this level, it's like an invitation to step into our seasonal nature and to really honor our seasonal nature and to work intentionally with that seasonal nature. And it's kind of like giving the middle finger to the distortion that we've all unconsciously agreed to, and
Yes.
deciding, okay, let's go back to our first nature.
Yeah.
Let's work as nature and not against nature as
Yeah.
well. And I love that intention. I really love that idea. And
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I just love that you used the word, that we've unconsciously, you said something along the lines of that we've unconsciously agreed to
Yeah.
these rituals, right? And that's something that I'm really bringing to the surface more recently. When I first started this project, I fell in love with the practice myself the year my
Hmm.
daughter was born. That was clearly a big year
Mm.
for me. But I just fell in love with it and would tell, all my friends about it every year. And they'd like want to do it with me, but couldn't quite figure out how it worked. And eventually they sort of kept asking me for more and it snowballed. And, that's how this project was born. But I didn't really understand where it came from
Hmm.
until, 5 years after self-publishing, I got picked up by my current publishers and they asked me for a history chapter.
Hmm.
And so that's when I dove into the history of the winter solstice and Christmas, actually, and I uncovered some really fascinating stuff
Hmm.
that was shocking to me. I was really surprised at how we have arrived at where we have arrived. Right,
Now
most of us
you got
do
to
not.
spill the beans now. You got to
Yeah,
spill the beans.
most of us don't think about why we celebrate the way we celebrate. We're like zombies just going through the motions,
Yeah.
Oh, at Christmas time, we go shopping and we do the Christmas tree and we do the lights and we do the Santa Claus thing. And then, whatever's next. Valentine's Day. Okay, now we buy the chalky little hearts and our kids hand out cards to all 30 of their classmates and,
Yeah.
whatever. We just go through the motions and we don't
Yeah.
question it, So it became really clear to me diving into the history. And I've gone really deep now this last year. I've read a total of 32 books on the history of our holidays.
Wow.
Yeah. And they have many times over been intentionally used in order to steer the behavior of the masses.
Hmm.
Right. And so it's very often like this 4-layered process or this 4-layer cake where it starts with the pagan um, traditions and cultures that, again, their rites and rituals came from living in relationship with nature
Yeah.
and honoring that sacred relationship, understanding that, as above, so below, as without, so within, that what was happening in nature was also reflected internally in the human, psyche and experience. And so we have all of these various pagan traditions that are nature based. And remember that already they had been trading and sharing and conquering each other. So that's already a soup of of all kinds of tangled where it all came from, right?
Yeah.
So it's already a very mixed bag. But then you have the overlay of the Roman Catholic Church that was attempting to unite all of these various belief systems under one umbrella.
Yeah.
under the umbrella of Christianity. And so they very intentionally, in order to ease conversion, they allowed for the keeping of many of these rituals and festivals, so to speak, but they gave them a new Christian meaning or overlaid this sort of Christian veneer.
Yeah.
And so that was the first layer of change. So you've got, the nature-based traditions, and then the overlay of the Roman Catholic Church. And then what basically happened, and especially with Christmas and Halloween is another big one, but darn those pesky pagans, like a lot of the more rowdy, promiscuous behaviors and celebrations were still bubbling up through the surface of Christianity. And so in the 17 and 1800s, in the Victorian age, there was this very intentional effort to almost like rebrand or domesticate these holidays by the elites and the upper classes. And it was very intentional. It was not accidental. And again, that was it was in order to shift the behavior of the working classes. And so
towards
what
would you say was shifted towards?
I'll go into the details of Christmas and it will make sense. But the last layer is the commercialism and this kind of opportunistic alliance between the upper classes that were, wanting to quiet down the lower classes, and then seeing the relationship with, the commercial interests and how that marriage could just divert attention, right, and shift behavior. So again, you've got nature-based rites and rituals, the Christian, the Roman Catholic overlay, and then the Victorian age reattempt to again quiet everything down, calm everything down, domesticate, and then the commercialism on top of that. And then here we are just going through the motions and sometimes very defensive of and attached to our traditions. And we don't even know that they were spoon-fed to us in order to, manipulate us, really. Yeah. So with Christmas, what happened specifically is you originally had all of these cultures that were essentially sun worshiping cultures, and the rebirth of the sun that happens at the time of the solstice is this very profound and magical and honored and sacred time where the veil is said to be at its thinnest. The word solstice itself means sun standing still. So sol meaning sun and sistere, to stand still in the Latin. And so after the solstice, which is on or around the 21st, the sun appears to pause on the horizon for 3 days. Yeah. And that was a time when, again, these ancient cultures were holding their breath, as in, is the life-giving light and sun going to come back? Because it was hard times without the sun around. Yeah. And so on the third day, the sun would then again begin to shift on the horizon and continue its journey southward, and we would get incrementally more and more sun every day, more and more life-giving light and warmth. And so that was basically the return of the light, right? Yeah. And so you have all of these nature-based cultures that are witnessing this time, celebrating this time. We have Stonehenge and Newgrange and Chaco Canyon and Nabta Playa, and on every single continent there are structures, ancient structures, that were clearly designed with care and precision to capture those first rays of light on the morning of the solstice. So clearly these cultures were tuned into this, cosmic happening and the rhythm of that. And so then you have all the traditions bubbling up around that. And then you have the Roman Catholic overlay, where they merged the unconquerable sun god and the deity of Mithras, right? Which were representations of that solstice honoring tradition. And they merged that with the story of Jesus. So most Christians understand that nobody actually knows when Jesus was born. Yeah. And in fact, in the early days of Christianity, Easter was the greater holiday because they actually knew when he was crucified, right? And so Christmas wasn't even a thing for the first 300 years of Christianity. You know, the birth of Jesus was unknown and it wasn't celebrated.
Yeah.
And so there's this Roman Catholic overlay of merging the story, the birth story of Jesus with these winter solstice sun worshiping cultures.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to the colonies in the early days, and what was actually happening around the peak of winter was more reminiscent of Saturnalia, which was the ancient Roman midwinter festival. And that festival looked more like carnival. It was a complete inversion of society. It was just total upheaval of the regular rules of how things were done. It was children ruling the household. A fool was crowned king. Slaves were served by slave owners. There was cross-dressing, gambling, debauchery, promiscuity. It was just this society-wide release valve, and everyone was in on it. Everyone participated, all the classes. And in fact, it was almost like this little unspoken agreement that if we allow everything to go topsy-turvy for these couple of weeks during midwinter, then we'll be ensured good service and all the classes will stay in their places, for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So,
It's
it was
almost
like
like a time to let all our impulses run wild.
Yes, it was letting the steam out of the kettle. Absolutely.
Yes.
So that's what was happening in America in the early days of the colonies. And that was happening alongside the Puritans, who were just not having it because they didn't even believe in celebrating any kind of Christmas because they associated it with this, that's a pagan holiday, And so there's that tension happening. And then essentially what began to happen is that the elites began to pull away from the tradition. So if you can imagine a rowdy group of young boys going to a wealthy manor in order to sing their songs, they called that wassailing. Here we go, we're wassailing, right? And if you think about some of our Christmas carols, oh, give us some figgy pudding, or we won't go until we get some. They would sing these songs and then they would perform plays in costume, guising, mumming. And they would expect to be given figgy pudding, or money or alcohol in exchange for their plays and songs. And what happened, and again, in the old world, the whole society willingly participated in this exchange. But in the colonies, the elites were pulling away, closing their doors, saying, no, we're not going to give you any of our cider that's in the cellar, go away. And you can imagine how very quickly that escalated into violence and vandalism. And they really had a problem on their hands. So what happened was in the 1800s, a very small group, like a handful of elite intellectual New Yorkers, individuals, got together and they literally rebranded Christmas. So again, Christmas was like Saturnalia. Christmas was not at all what we think of today. In fact, it was outlawed in the colonies between 1650, or in Massachusetts, and between 1659 and 1681. Christmas was outlawed, right? So it had to be something different than what we're talking about today. Because why would you outlaw, hanging out with your family at home and opening presents? So they literally rebranded Christmas. They came up with this romanticized tradition, and they did cherry pick myth and mythology and traditions from the old world. So that's why, you hear some of these things and you say, oh, but didn't St. Nicholas come from this, old, Dutch saint? And it's like, well, no, they used that sort of, theme and imagery to create this modern Santa Claus. But, so all you can sort of discover where some of their inspiration came from.
Yeah.
But they pulled all this imagery and all this myth together and created a domesticated version of the holiday that would be celebrated within the walls of the parlor.
Mhm.
The gifts would now be given to the children, not to the lower classes. So there would be no mixing and mingling of the classes. There, look at this little tradition of the Christmas tree. Let's include that. And, and Saint Nick and, okay, 8 magical reindeer. There was an old Norse god Odin who had an 8-legged horse. Maybe it came from that. There's, reindeer are very, prominent features and lots of myth in the northern cultures. There were liminal creatures that were said to fly across the sky. And, so there's all sorts of places where they drew their inspiration from, but they quite literally like recreate, just dreamt up a romanticized version of a new holiday.
So what
And
I'm no,
yeah,
no,
and
no, go ahead.
well, that's just why we celebrate Christmas the way that we do today, and then
Yeah.
they started that gift giving tradition with the children again to sort of do away with the mixing and mingling of the classes, and
Mhm.
then some bookshops got on board, and then the commercial aspect of it just sort of took on a life of its own, and then here we are today, giving our children 42 presents every Christmas, and who knows what. And the reason I want to go back really quickly to the reason this matters
Yeah.
is that, our rituals are so powerful. And this is what the elites and the Roman Catholic Church and those in power and or seeking power, seeking to control the masses have known is that these are moments where we all collectively pause in
Mhm.
agreement with each other. We all pause and we all put our attention in one general direction.
Mhm.
And that is massively powerful because my personal belief is that human consciousness, and probably a lot of your listeners, and that human consciousness is divinely creative. So if we
Yes.
are all collectively agreeing to pause and look in one particular direction, we are in fact creating reality.
Yeah.
And then two, ritual is a way that we inform the upcoming generations of what is most important about being human. Look
Yeah.
here. This is the most sacred thing about being a human. So what are we teaching our children right now? We're teaching them that shopping, sugar, and alcohol, that
It
commercialism
matters most.
is matters most. Exactly. And so we are in more than one way literally creating, the future through our children and also just through our attention. And
Yeah.
so that is why I personally, if the holidays have been rebranded time and time again by those, seeking power or in power, I am like calling for us to rebrand the holidays from the bottom up this
Yeah.
time and to choose how we want to celebrate and what we hold more steer and what's sacred and what we want to teach our children. And it started with this practice, the 13 sacred nights, and now it's bled into all the other holidays. And I've got history and ideas for all of them, but it started with the 13 sacred nights.
I love that so much. I can feel the passion in how this is meaningful to you. It is tangible. It's something that is like even the way you've studied it, like to really understand the roots of it and to really understand, okay, I choose the path of rebranding this season in a way that is really meaningful. When you were speaking, I had this analogy that I want to share with you. It's as if you have like, think about humanity having this collective body, literally. Um, I have a feeling that on some level, you will have the collective body of humanity on your Qigong table, and you are working on trying to rebalance the energetic blueprint of the collective body of humanity. It's like you're no longer doing Qigong for yourself. You are taking the collective through Qigong realignment. I'm not sure if you would put it that way. Almost like, I don't know. Um, yeah, that's the analogy that has been in my mind as I was hearing you speak. I heard you like name the energetic distortions that are affecting the
Mm.
collective body of humanity and almost wanting to reinstate like balance and flow and harmony at that level, like recalibrating the meridians of the collective body and stuff like that. How is this sitting with you?
That's amazing. I mean, I've never thought of it in that way, but it's beautiful. I was on a podcast yesterday, Celestial Curiosities, and they are deep in astrology, and they did a very brief astrology reading of my chart, um,
Hmm.
and which I haven't gone really deeply with. And one of the things they said was that service is really important to me, so that all
Hmm.
tracks. And yeah, I do. I see the big picture here, and I see how our rituals can, in a very profound way, really shift who we are and how we're being, and bring us. My prayer is that all of this work that I'm doing just contributes love to humanity and brings us closer to God again. However, you name that something greater.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my intention for sure.
Oh, I love that. I love that so
Yeah.
much. Um, what I would love to ask you now, it's like, when you look at if you were to give a collective analysis through the lens of Qigong of how humanity has been doing over the last few years, if you were to give some form of like um energetic diagnosis of how humanity's energy has been flowing or not flowing, what would you say?
Oh, I don't know if I could. I think, well, probably Western culture,
Yes.
I would say, has a very massive earth imbalance.
Say
Really massive
more.
earth imbalance. Just in this constant need to consume,
Yeah.
right? And it could also be seen from the lens of a metal imbalance of, filling this empty belly. If you if you've read any of Gabor Mate's work, he
Hmm.
talks about addiction and how there's it's this sense of there's a realm in the Buddhist tradition called the realm of hungry ghosts, which is
Yes.
the title of one of his books, which is a brilliant book. I recommend it. Everybody should read that book. It really helps you understand addiction with more compassion and on a much deeper level. But but it's this realm within the Buddhist tradition where these hungry ghosts have these huge extended bellies, and they have these little tiny mouths, and so they
Mm,
can never get enough in to fill the emptiness inside.
yeah.
Right. And I think that's very much an accurate depiction of our modern Western culture, is that we have this, big hunger inside of us. And I think the hunger is really for love
Mhm.
and God. And yet, we're trying to stuff in just anything and everything that we can buy or consume in order to fill that space, and it's never going to work, you
Yeah.
know. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
And what would let's say at the very least a Western society with an Earth imbalance look like?
yeah. Well, that's what it looks like. It
I mean,
looks like
an Earth um back into balance. Maybe
back
let me.
into balance.
Yes.
Yeah, that would look like reconnecting with the physical, with the Mother Earth, the Mother
Yeah.
energy, right?
Yeah.
And then the metal imbalance that I also spoke of would be reconnecting with the Father, um, the energy of Source or Spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that.
and being that channel in between, right? Because that's who we are. We are the channel between above and below, heaven and earth, between substance and wave, between
Yeah.
particle and wave,
Yeah.
spirit and
I love to
substance.
think of
Yeah,
it as we are the lightning rods.
yeah. Our consciousness is bringing it through.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, um the intention of this podcast, I call this podcast Enheartened because I really feel like we came here to practice loving more of who we are, especially the parts of us that we've been conditioned not to love, the parts of us we've been conditioned to see as unlovable. And I know that we are never a complete project.
yeah.
And my assumption is that even with the practice of Qigong and everything that you've surrendered to, there are still some aspects of yourself that sometimes when they emerge, you're like, I wish I didn't have to deal with you. So the question is, what are some parts of you that you are still learning how to love better?
Uh Man. Well, it's perfect the way you started before we hopped on live and started
Yeah.
recording, you said you gave us permission to just like really suck today,
Yeah.
to like
Yeah.
totally blow it.
Yeah.
And that I absolutely have that perfectionist,
Yes.
thing, which is why, somebody was laughing at me, a good friend the other day, because I had told them that I'd read 32 books on this topic. And they said, you could have just read 3. That probably would have sufficed. And every time I get off of a podcast interview, I've done so many of them now, and I still have that moment of just like inner cringe of like, oh, I could have said this better, or I forgot to mention that, or oh shoot, so that
Yeah.
inner critic is bothersome, at
Yeah.
times.
And if we were opening a moment to like cringe out loud, I mean, first, in what kind of element would it fit? If we're looking at it through the Qigong,
Through the
ease
Qigong.
would through the Qigong lens, like the ease in dealing with the imperfection of the human, or like our ability to make fun of ourselves. I love the full archetype, which is the part of us that knows how to to dance with kind of shame to a certain degree. It's like the fool knows
Yeah.
how to play with shame, to juggle with it, to make a show of it, to
Yeah.
riff off of that, to dance with it. I don't know.
I think that, you could slightly angle probably each of the 5 elements to describe,
Yeah,
in some ways they're very similar, and in other ways very unique. But metal really lends itself to that, feeling that you're never enough,
yeah,
that it's never enough, low self-worth, low self-confidence. The first uh, other element that came to mind was fire, where we're really looking for clarity, but in like it can be, if it's imbalanced in an obsessive way,
yeah,
like, and that, really deep need to, it's like lighting a match in the darkness, like what's really here now,
yeah.
but and then when that when the warmth of the flame is missing, we become hypercritical and
Yes.
cruel, even,
Yeah.
it's the warmth, the warmth from the flame is missing. So I could probably describe some aspect of self-criticism from each of the 5 lenses.
I
Yeah.
see that. If you
Yeah.
had your own Saturnalia moment right now, like a moment where nothing has to be, it's like most of the time we try to keep things together, have our ducks in a row. But if
Yeah.
in this moment your ducks didn't even want to be in a row, what would it look like? What would
What
it
would it
look like to have a little bit of a fuck it moment? A little bit of like indulging on the imperfection side.
Hmm,
A little bit more of like being spiritually incorrect or politically incorrect or whatever form of incorrectness it would be. What would it look like for you? I'm kind of calling a little bit
I don't even
the divine
yeah,
rebel inside of you.
the divine rebel. I don't even know. I don't even know what that would be.
I feel like it is being expressed right now. It's like not knowing what
It's
that
like
would be.
I don't
How does
even
that
know.
feel?
Yeah, how does it feel to not have the right answer? Maybe
Yeah,
that's it. Just not
yeah,
having an answer, not
yeah,
coming up with some perfect response. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. A perfect response
Yeah.
to a stupid question.
Yeah.
I love it. An imperfect response to a stupid question. Eh, I just love that. I just love that. There's a part of me that, just like you shared here, like wanting to restore the original blueprint. I also
Mhm.
feel like sometimes in the restoration process of the initial blueprint, we kind of make mistakes.
Mhm.
Um we miss the point at some point, you miss the mark and things like that. So I just love the
Yeah.
exploration that this conversation has been. One thing that I would love to mention before, as a last question.
Yeah.
I spent the biggest part of last year and this year writing this book, Scars of Gold,
Yeah.
that got published
I'm
this
reading
year.
it right now, by the way. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
oh,
And I
thank you
keep
so much.
thinking about how, your metaphor of scars of gold is so beautiful, right?
Mm,
But it also, it really reminds me of this practice that I'm offering, because we're talking about wrapping ourselves in the radiant darkness, right? And
Yes.
embracing the darkness and being willing to go into the darkness in order to discover the light within.
Yes.
Right. And again, to go back to that match metaphor, if you light a match in broad daylight, it's kind of underwhelming. But
Yes.
if you light it in the darkness, then wow, it's really readily available, for our senses. And so in the peak of winter, in the winter solstice, the seasons are supporting us
Yeah.
in witnessing the rebirth of the inner light, right?
Yeah.
Of our own inner light. And that imagery of the scars of gold was just so beautiful to read about, and to read about, how you talk a lot about being willing to go into the dark places, right? And
Yeah.
in some ways, it's so beautifully connected with this winter solstice practice that I'm offering.
I love that. I love that
Yeah.
so much, and it captures beautifully the essence of the book and the essence of really how to work with this energy that we've learned to dread and we've
Mm.
learned to run away from. Um, so I wanted to ask you, what is your scar of gold? What is that wound that turned out? I have my guesses, but I would love to know. I would love to be wrong. I'd love to hear more. What are some wounds that back then felt unsurmountable and that turned out, that became scars of gold?
Oh, I think it's just relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how relationship has taught me to be more honest with myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 What is a part of you that you've, but like looking back, you've chronically, I want to say, abandoned in relationships that during, like at the moment, the thought of
Yeah.
abandoning these parts of you is a thought that is unbearable.
I think it's that ability to say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it starts before my marriage,
Hmm.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah. The reason I chose my marriage was because of the stuff that came before it,
Yes.
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And if
yeah.
somebody was dealing with that same kind of imprint, what would you say to them right now?
Mm. I think, have compassion for yourself,
Yeah.
trust in your personal journey, and to the best of your ability, surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Um, I just want to say, thank you so much for the stewardship and what you're creating at the moment and your devotion to your craft. It's been a pleasure for me to have this conversation and to learn about the mystery that Qigong is, and also the 13 sacred nights and the opportunity that it offers to really recalibrate, how we relate to our seasons, our internal seasons and also external seasons. And yeah, if to anybody who listened to this conversation, if it sparks something inside of you, I'm inviting you to follow that spark. I'm inviting you to
Mhm.
lean into Lara's universe. I think your website is Lara J. So is it
Yes.
jday.com?
Yeah.
But anything else that you would like to share um, for anybody here? Yeah, any about your work, where they can get into, how they can get into your universe, how they can
Yeah.
suck in what you have to offer, what comes up.
Yeah, my website is the easiest place. As you said, it's Lara J Day, and don't sneak a U in there, because even when I spell it out for people,
Yeah.
Lara, they sometimes sneak the U in. So
Yes.
larajday.com, and all my offerings are there. I have seasonal Qigong courses
Yeah.
that you can buy a la carte. And then this year, I'm honestly not sure if I'm going to do this again. I'm going to see how it goes, but I am offering a year-long guided experience with the 13 sacred nights, because
Mm.
we're charting each night of during that window. We'll gather together live 5 times on Zoom, and then there are pre-recorded meditations, qigong offerings, and written teachings, and a master, all kinds of things in the course itself. But then we're going to gather once a month for the remainder of the year and refer back to what we created during the sacred nights and see how it correlates and corresponds to our life's unfolding. We'll continue to practice and center and meditate and explore the tangible energy through Qigong. So that's happening this year. I'm not sure if I'm going to offer it again. No promises, because I'm learning to have boundaries and say no, Xavier. And tune into what feels true and right and honest, as I go along. But I am offering that this year. So, and then I do, private individual sessions on Zoom. In person, I'll give a big hefty discount if you're willing to come meet with me in the flesh on the Central Coast of California. I'm trying to encourage more in the flesh, in the room, human interaction. So
I love that. That. So there you go, everybody. If the conversation has sparked something inside of you and you're like, maybe I need some good Qigong in my life. Maybe I need to, see what these 13 Sacred Nights oracles, this deck, how it can help me realign with my natural rhythm. And I'm inviting you to look into Lara's universe. So it's been a pleasure, Lara, to have you here today. And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Xavier. Really lovely. Yeah.
All righty. Okay, everybody. We're going to see you on the next episode of Enheartened. Keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.